G'day guys and welcome to Ask A Pathfinder. Today we are going to be taking a look at prejudice in RPGs. Now I just want to mention that this is in fact mature content and viewer discretion is definitely advised. And the thoughts and ideas that are going to be expressed in this video are going to be in the context of an RPG setting, not the real world. So please make sure that you use any of this mature content at your tables with due care and attention. So, without any further ado, let's get into it! G'day guys and welcome. Yes, okay, so today we are going to be talking about prejudice. Now look, I already know that there's going to be so many things being said about this video, but look, let me start by first of all saying that I and Ask A Pathfinder do not condone, promote, or encourage any kind of prejudice acts in the real world. It's just not on. But in the game world, we accept and we acknowledge that there is definitely something to be said about prejudice being used as a narrative device in order to shape, manipulate, and otherwise control the story in which your players are participating in. There is, however, a correct way to do it and an incorrect way to do it. So, let's first of all start by talking about prejudice in RPGs. Why are we even having this video? Well, prejudice has existed in RPGs since the beginning. It has always been an idea that segregation, separation, xenophobia, even the concept of a majority group basically undermining an entire species based on their race, sexuality, artistic preferences, social standing, have been a major part of D&D. Mostly because it came around in the 70s. Of course, it was a huge topic back then. And it was, of course, something that was discussed and addressed in the various rules and regulations and characters that were built back then. Dwarves, for example, hate elves, or at least hate the elves' artistic style, to the point where they're quite offensive about it. Elves are flighty, namby-pamby, wishy-washy, artsy-fartsy guys who put frills and whistles and bells and leaves on everything, whereas dwarven structures are stout and sturdy and masculine, and they're rigid and they're rugged and they're awesome. You know, like, that's a type of prejudice, to sort of turn around and assume that all elves act that way, and likewise to assume that all dwarves are these big, smelly, brash drunkards. These things were just commonplace. But these things aren't necessarily stereotypes at this level. At this point, they're stereotypes. Stereotypes can be both hurtful and be very informative. All dwarves being drunk, rowdy, burly people make it easy to understand exactly when you are dealing with a dwarf. It makes it easy to understand how to deal with a dwarf, and does so in a context that doesn't victimize anyone, because dwarves are not real. You might insult a few Scottish people if you butcher their accent, but apart from that, you're pretty safe. However, we're not always safe when we look at this, especially in today's society. One particular hot topic that has come up is the drow. Now, a lot of people have theorized that the drow, being dark-skinned, has a huge influence on the social understanding of evil drow. All black, dark-skinned elves have to be evil, and yada 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 yada. Look, I don't care what color their skin is. I just want evil elves to be evil elves. And if Warcraft has taught me anything, is that yes, the dark-skinned elves can most certainly be the good guys, and the, dark-skinned elves can also be the bad guys. Whatever the case may be, I believe the only thing that should really matter is evil elves should be evil, and good elves should be good. None of this, oh, I'm fighting against the whole nature of my evilness because I am a lone wanderer in a sea of evil twats. No, it's none of that. It shouldn't happen. But, I digress. Starts a hot topic. Do you guys believe that the elves are, the drow are in fact an expression of racism in Dungeons and Dragons? Leave a comment below. But moving on from there, more importantly than these little kind of crossovers where reality kind of twists and intertwines with the prejudice we see in the game world, is whether or not we choose to take offense at it, right? If you are in a social scenario, if you are in a comfortable context with friends, and you say something offensive, if you aren't with people that can, take that on and sort of enjoy it and have fun with the humor, then you're either a complete knob, or you are obviously hanging out with people who you're not that don't find that same kind of joy, and you shouldn't be using it. So I will give you an example. Now, I had a particular individual who was on one of my tables, and I was playing a gnomish character. And as per, I was obviously a very short person, and I played up the idea of short jokes. So I was always asking for people to help me with stuff on a high ledge. I was always asking for people to like give me a ride on their piggybacks and stuff like that. Now, we had a relatively short person on the table, and they eventually approached me and said, listen, these are just not funny. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't really, notice that. I didn't pay attention to it. And I apologized, and I stopped doing it. That is a positive example of how offensiveness should be handled at a table. If you are offended, say something. Don't be a knob about it. Don't turn around and say, oh, how dare you? Oh my God, you said something so offensive and I cannot even believe it. You should feel ashamed of yourself. Ashamed. That is the one thing that no one wants to feel, and especially if they're trying to have fun, because that then implies that your fun is something to be ashamed of. And if you're with friends, that's kind of got so many different mixed messages. So, for both parts of this, first part is have your fun. If you're offended, say something. If someone is offended, apologize and then move on. Do not do it. Continue onwards. Be pleasant about it. That is the best way to deal with it, because the thing is you might want to offend or take humor in the game, but you don't want to offend or take humor at another player's expense. At no point should you be playing a game at another player's expense. Okay, now for you as a GM, let's talk about GMs. Hey GM, how you doing? So what is it that you need to do when you handle prejudice? Well, first and foremost is you need to know why. Do not just throw prejudice into your games because it's realistic and it's gritty and I want to make my players feel something, right? It needs to play a part in your story or in your plot. The thing is that hyperrealism can distract from your story and can distract from your game. So if you spend half your time having people trying to very realistically overcome social hurdles and boundaries which have absolutely nothing to do with the story, then you'll find that they will probably end up trying to fight against those boundaries a lot more than your narrative. Alright, do not bully or victimize your players. Now I'm going to say this again because I feel like I need to say it again. And listen very closely. Do not bully or victimize your players. That is to say, do not sit there and insult them over and over and over and over again. Listen, I, as someone who was called token for a great portion of my life, I'm not even joking about this, I came to accept it. And then eventually I realized, hey, you know what? I want people to call me by my name. And a lot, it happened. I just said, guys, it's enough with this. It's done. I'm not in high school anymore. I'm, a grown-ass man. My name is not Token. And the thing is that if you get to that point and you don't realize you're doing it, if you're always targeting the same person with the same things over and over and over again, it whittles them down. It wears them in, right? If you are going to bully or victimize a, character that belongs to a player, make sure that those similarities between what you're victimizing are drastically different to the features of that individual. Yeah, do not assume these things. Do, get players to really describe their characters and how they visualize it and how they want it represented. And you as a GM do your best to represent that. Then, if you want to throw prejudice at it, pick something that they're going to always know is in-game and not you picking on them as a character, as a person, as an individual. All right. Lastly, make sure that player is in on it, right? Do not throw a joke out and have them go, right? They need to be in on it. They have to be a part of it because it's the joy, it's the fun, right? Like, it could be something like, yeah, the guards are like giving you shit and they're like getting up in your face and they're like, pumping their chests and they're like, hey, boy, what are you doing over here, boy? Using your side of the street, boy, get over there. And, yeah, you could have your guy go, like, yeah, what's up? And I'm not gonna be knocked down by you because, I have every right to be on this side of the street. You can't tell me where to go. And the guards draw their swords and your friends draw their swords and then boom, suddenly there's a fight. If they're in on it, if they're having fun with it, fantastic. You've done your job as a GM. If they sit there and awkwardly go, oh, yeah, all right, and walk across the road, unless they're being intentionally manipulative, back off. That's it. Just pull the reins back. Be like, that kind of went down bad. I don't need to follow that through. There you go. All right. The last thing I want to leave you guys with is slurs and insults, okay? Now, prejudice, in the context that we were talking about, is things like, obviously, the police picking on people, or simply making note openly about certain similarities and stereotypes. But slurs and insults kind of get to that really sharp point where it's about what you say and how you say it. Now, if you say something with an intent to hurt someone, it doesn't matter if you're throwing it at the character, you are going to hurt them. It's just how it works. So if I turned around and said to my dwarf that, it's like, oh my god, you smell like wet dog and goblin ass, right? If I actually said that to him, like, people believe, he wouldn't feel that. Obviously, I'm not talking to him. Very obviously, I'm not. But I am yelling at my friend. I'm yelling this abuse at them. And they can, some people can take that. Some people can take that in good humor. But, repetition, constant berating like that, it wears people down. And there's no reason why you should be doing that to your fellow players in the first place. And as a GM, if you do that, you need to make sure that there's some repercussions for these people, right? Like, the thing is that the players need to be able to defend themselves and not just have all this stuff thrown at them, right? But there are good ways to use insults and slurs. Number one, always make sure that it's in good humor. Try to be witty about it. Don't just cuss, don't swear. Like the goblin ass thing, that's just a swear. Just big deal. And it's like, like throw things like, you half-drunk son of a bugbear, right? Like, that's kind of funny because it's not, like there's no swearing, there's no cussing, there's no aggression to it. It's like, filthy knife ears, right? Again, still no, there's still hostility, but again, that aggressive tone, the swearing, the cussing, the anger, it's not there because you as a player are separating your slurs and keeping them in an in-game context. So, thank you very much, guys. I do hope you enjoyed this video. It actually took me a few goes, so I'm kind of hoping that I did this topic some justice. Look, once more, just to kind of double reiterate, I do not believe that anyone should really be experiencing prejudice in the real world. They shouldn't be using RPGs as an excuse to vent their, any kind of real world prejudice that they have onto a group of unsuspecting players. What it should always be, and this actually came from, well, it's not a direct quote, but, John Cleese actually did say that the nature of a lot of humor comes from offense. You may say a joke and it may offend one group of people. That's fine. They'll live. They'll be okay. If you're doing it for the entertainment purpose, if you're doing it for fun and enjoyment, to spread fun and enjoyment, not to victimize one particular group and separate them, but that everyone is enjoying it. You make fun of these people and those people and elves and dwarves and goblins and fighters and paladins, If you're making fun of so many different groups and so many different people, then everyone's having fun. It's when you turn your focus and your eye onto one particular individual or one particular group, that's where that becomes a toxic part of your game, and you just want to cut it out. You do not want to have that floating around with you. So, with that in mind, thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this video. I very much enjoyed making it for you guys. If you liked it, hit that like button. If you want to see more videos like this, hit that subscribe button. Check us out on Facebook, Discord, and of course, if you want to donate to Ask A Pathfinder and become one of our cheeky goblins, go visit us on Patreon, and for as little as $1 a month, you can, make sure that I can try and make better videos than the ones I'm making now. And as always, guys, till next time, keep your dice rolling and make sure your ideas stay mindworm free. Have a good one.